Hi, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Over 50 and Flourishing. This podcast is being released in October, where it is World Menopause Month. Finally, a month dedicated to menopause and the conversations thereof. I've got a wonderful guest who's going to be joining me in just a second, but I figured I would start out each of these episodes with my own personal menopause story. And I know that we all have many of them. And as I think back on that journey and some of the symptoms and signs that would hit me, I would never forget, and I was anchoring the news at the time, brain fog can be such a big part of a woman's menopause journey. And I'll never forget, I always felt so assured of my brain's ability to function news set, especially during breaking news coverage. And that was one of the things that I really enjoyed doing the most, was taking a story that was happening live, not being scripted, and having to piece together and thread together the narrative as you're learning information. And I will never forget, I would sit there and I would struggle to remember what was just said, or even just putting my sentences together. There were these lapses and these gaps that were starting to happen. And I thought, my gosh, this isn't me. This isn't who I am. This was an area where I felt that I excelled, and I'm struggling to find the words. And it was so scary for me. And it wasn't until I started to get help and to get treatment for my menopause that suddenly the words came back and I can actually speak the English language. Thank goodness. But yeah, that was something that maybe you can relate to as well. And my guest on today's episode can certainly share in this journey and stories, because she too is a journalist. She has been in the news business, a New York City news anchor for more than 30 years, telling stories in her community. And she is also an amazing woman of social media. You have seen her most likely. If you follow me, chances are you follow her. Her name is Tamsen Fidel, and her Instagram, her TikTok has just blown up. Why? Because she has taken that narrative about menopause and has brought it to social media. And she has really made it her mission to be an advocate for women in midlife, to be an advocate for women in the workforce in midlife, and to make policy change. She's working on a documentary where she has collected a group of women and is discussing various menopause journeys. So she is taking her journalism background and bringing the menopause story to life. And we have so many woven threads of commonality that I just absolutely adore this woman. And I am so grateful that she is here today. Hey there, coffee lovers. Let's talk about something we can all relate to, our love for that rich, aromatic cup of coffee in the morning. But how often have you settled for a mediocre or burnt brew, or even had to splurge on a drive-through for just a decent cup of coffee? Well, I'm here to tell you there is a game changer on the horizon, and it's Cometeer. You can customize your coffee however you like it, whether it's a hot cup, an iced coffee, a latte, or even a coffee-infused martini. Cometeer has you covered. So join the future of coffee with Cometeer and get a curated starter pack of their most popular roasts. All you have to do is go to cometeer.com/over50 to get a free 8-pack and a travel mug when you sign up. That is a free 8-pack of coffees and a travel mug when you sign up at cometeer.com/over50. My gosh, you are somebody who is so special to me, and you're like my distant cousin. That's how I feel about you. I don't get to see
love it.
you, but it's true. It's true. I mean, we're kindred spirits, and we have such similar paths, and in both the news business and social media. And I adore the message that you put out. I adore following your feed. Instagram and TikTok. My gosh, you have blown up, sister. You are huge, and you are loud and proud about menopause and midlife and transition and all of that. And I commend you for doing it during your walk in an industry that tends to marginalize women over 50.
Yeah.
And I just want to, first of all, say thank you for the courage for doing that. And there must have been a motivator. There must have been something planted inside you that said, I've got to push this message out.
You know, it's funny you ask that, and I go back to it every once in a while, like when did I start doing this? Because I didn't set out to go. You know what? I think my next frontier is going to be menopause. Like that was not it at all. You know,
Right.
I had an incident happen at work, and I didn't know what was going on. And what we do best is like investigate, research, figure it out. And I started interviewing. I really started interviewing people and doing my own research and trying to figure it out and going to a doctor. You know, I live in New York, so I should have been able to go into a doctor and say like, "Hey, this is going on," and that doctor say, "Hey, you might be, it might be menopausal. Let's check your blood. Let's figure out what are your signs, what are your symptoms." None of
Mhm.
that happened. And so I did start doing that. And then I thought, wow, if I'm talking about this, there's other people who've got to be talking about this. This is remarkable to me that there's 34 symptoms. A billion women are going to be in it.
Yeah.
What? So I was scared, scared to admit I was in it. And I didn't go to Instagram at first because we know too many people there.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
TikTok, where all the kids were, or so I
Right.
thought. And I listed out those 34 symptoms of menopause. I literally read it off of an app that I have on my phone. It's a teleprompter app. It
Yeah.
literally, because I was like, I can't memorize that. I had brain fog beyond. And I listed out
Wow.
the symptoms, right? And so they're like scrolling on my little teleprompter. And that video hit over 1 million in records.
Billion. I know.
And I went, that's
What?
in with one after another, and you know this because you've done this much longer than I have. But when you start hearing that voice, that like,
Mhm.
surge of people talking about the same thing with the same comments over and over, we're probably very much the same way where when I see patterns. And I started seeing this pattern over and over of this need and want to talk about in this confusion. And so over time, not right away, I will admit, I went over to Instagram and started, talking about it there. And that's where I really found a community that was not only willing to talk about it, but really wanting more information. And I
Yeah.
think that I thought that's what I do. I know how to give information. I know how to find it, and I'm a conduit, right? Just like
Yep.
you, I'm a conduit of information. I know how to find it, drill it down, and then send it over to somebody else, and whatever they do with it. And so it's felt really good. It's felt really good. But by the way, speaking about having a voice and talking to women, you are the gold standard of that.
Oh, Tamsen, come on. No.
It's true. I feel like that, and I love the fact that we have such a similar background. The first time we spoke, and I went, "Wait, University of Houston, and what
Yes.
in Texas, and what?" Everything just
Yes.
seemed really. It was
Like
really an incredible
this.
moment for me. Yeah,
Yeah,
really
I
incredible.
agree. I think somehow, somewhere we're related, if not by
Yes,
choice, then in family. I'm a believer in
I
that.
claim you. I claim
I
you.
claim you too. I think you're awesome sauce is what I think. And I just love how you overcame that fear and trepidation of sharing that message, especially because we share a similar industry. You know, you've
Yeah.
been in the news industry over 30 years, correct?
Yes.
And
Yes. I started it in 94, 93 or 94. I'm coming up on 30 years.
you're coming up
Right.
on 30. Okay, and we
Yeah.
started at the same time because I
The
started
time.
93,
What
94.
happened to the
Good
time?
times. Good times.
I
Um,
started in radio in 93. That's when I started. Radio
yes.
in 93. Yes.
Okay, and I was in radio from 91 to 93. Like I said, we are separated at birth, the two of us. But you boldly and daringly took a message that was so taboo in an industry that tends to push women out at 50 and in midlife, and cast them aside because they're not young, youthful. And yet a woman, and we joked about this, in our 20s and 30s when we anchored, we were co-anchoring with
Yeah.
40-year-old and 50-year-old men with gray hair. So that was
Yes.
okay. And in fact, they wanted us to look older to be able to match our co-anchors, right? And you've got a funny story about that.
Well, I have a funny yet I can't believe I did this story. I had a co-anchor at the time, Oak Hill, West Virginia. You know, for anybody that's not familiar, usually don't start in a big market, right? You start in a feeder market or a different market or a smaller city. And I started in Oak Hill, West Virginia. I'd never been to West Virginia. I drove my car into it. I parked on like a hill. I found an apartment for literally $250 a month. That was my rent. That was what I could afford. And I started my job. And my job was in an old bowling alley. That's where the television station was at the time. And they said, if you want to anchor, and we had typewriters, if I just want to date us for a second. But they said, if you want to anchor, you need to look older. You don't look
Yeah.
comparable to your co-anchor. And so I said, what am I going to do? And so it was the news director's wife who said, you need to cut your hair. And I said, oh, okay, my hair, I have to cut my hair. It used to be back in a bow and I thought it looked like, okay.
Right.
And so I went and I just got it cut off, like maybe 8 to 10 inches off, like it was down my back. And I
Right.
brought it in a little knot. And I threw it on the instructor's desk. And I was like, now can I
You
anchor?
happy?
And I was happy. And I had that what they used to call like the Katie Couric cut. It was very short and very
Yes.
chic. And so that's what I did. I had a short hair. I felt like felt like I looked a little bit older and I got to anchor. And that was my first anchoring job because
Yeah. And it's
I got a better
crazy.
haircut.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure it eventually grew into something you were happy with too, by the way. But it's so ironic that here we are as younger women in an industry having to look older, sound older, behave older in order to be
Yeah.
respected so
Yeah.
that we can be trustworthy. And then all of a sudden,
Then,
we get older. Now we're like, oh, I need to look younger. I need to behave younger. I need
right.
to not be matronly so that I'm still, considered
Yes.
watchable. I mean, what a
Relevant.
ridiculous model this is.
What a ridiculous model. I had somebody write to me, I don't know, it was a few months, maybe 6 months ago, and they said, Tamsen, at your age, knees are not a girl's best friend. Cover them up. Because I guess I had a dress on where my knees were showing, and I guess
Uh-huh.
they're like wrinkly now
Yeah, we get the
more
little
than ever.
wrinkles above the knees. Yes,
I
those
like
are
my
our
knees.
stripes.
I like my knees. And so, anyways, I was like, what? My knees? And I thought, what? And the comment came from a woman.
A woman. Yes.
I couldn't believe it. I
I
couldn't
know.
believe it.
It's shocking. Does it shock you? I mean, you and I both have to go through a comment section, both at work
Yeah.
and on social media. Are you kind of blown away by the nastiness and the personal cuts and digs?
I'm always surprised that, and I guess, I try to put it in perspective, but it's hard. You take I'm
Yeah.
human, you're human. And so I take them personally and I'm like, well, if this person thought that, do 100 people think this? And I am always surprised because, and then I'm always saddened. So I hope that if I do something funny, that maybe somebody lightens up. And I have found, and I don't know about you, but at first somebody gave me advice when I first started, like, just ignore it. And I said, okay, but sometimes I can't. Like there's sometimes at like 1 o'clock in the morning when I'm scrolling, I can't ignore it. And so
Yeah.
I'll say like, I'm so sorry you're having a bad day, or I hope your day gets better. And then they'll write back and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to say that. So
Yes.
I'm always shocked. Like, well, why did you? What
I
made you
know.
do that?
Yeah, it's because of where they were, I guess, at the time,
Yes.
and like
Yes.
you, I believe, kill them with kindness. Just come back
A
with
hundred
kindness and
percent.
respect, and generally, they'll come around and, "Oh, I didn't mean it that way," or, "Oh, I'm
Yep.
so sorry," but
Yep.
I wish people would think before they spoke or wrote because, the
Yes,
world
me
would
too.
be such a kinder, gentler place, especially on social media platforms, and especially when you're trying to put out a message of hope and optimism and help and guidance and sisterhood. Hey, we're in this together and we're not
Yes.
alone. You would like to see more of an embracing instead of a lashing out. But I guess we just have to remember that that's them and not us. But you're right; it's
Yeah.
a process to be able to deal with it.
It
And
is. I worry about younger people getting those things though, and
of
not being able
course,
to quite, because it's hard for us to digest it and us to deal with it. And so I always think about that in the back of my mind, like, oh gosh, I hope nobody does that to my 12-year-old nephew, or to
yeah,
a young woman who's like trying to come into her own and figure out who she is. So yeah, you're right. I would love to do away with those if there was any way to.
yeah, yeah. It takes courage to boldly move through and to
Yeah.
do your message, and it takes courage for you as a 50 plus news anchor to boldly come out and say, you know what, I'm going through menopause, and not only am I going through it, but I'm going to start talking about it. I'm going to start sharing it on the social platforms, and you're really trying to create change in the workforce. So tell
Yeah.
everybody about that because I think that is so important.
Yeah, thank you. I think that the workplace is a difficult time for 100 reasons for women, in this age range and in the changes we're going through, but especially when you're dealing with some of these symptoms, because we joke and laugh about hot flashes, but hot flashes can be debilitating and a sign of something much more serious, first of all, but also the fact that brain fog comes along, and brain fog knocked me off my game. Like
Mhm.
I don't know about you, but I lost my confidence. I lost my
Yes.
ability to feel comfortable ad-libbing, meaning when you talk after a
Mhm.
story, because I would search for words and I didn't want to do that on television. And then I would find certain words that I didn't know. I'd see them come in the prompter, a word like people, and I couldn't pronounce. I it wouldn't come out of my mouth. So
Yeah.
it really did hit my confidence. And then as I started to do a little more research into this, I'm working on a documentary about it and a book, and I started interviewing women that were like at the top of their game. And one woman said she had so much rage in the workplace
Mhm.
because of hormones and because of her symptoms of perimenopause. She literally turned down jobs. She turned down big key positions because she was scared she couldn't handle them. Another woman said she was in the middle of presenting to a television, station, like she did like a scripted shows, and she said
Mhm.
I literally had to leave the room in my presentation or rip my shirt off because I was so hot, and then my heart started racing. So I just think it's so important to bring that into the workplace, and so I have done that with the company that I have now, and they're in the process of implementing that in their handbook so that women feel like they have some resources to be able to
Ah,
talk to somebody, that
right.
they feel like they can get education. Look, this is a whole area that there's so many parts of it. The UK has done an incredible job of what they've done with their workplace policy, and they've done
Mhm.
it with a lot of big companies. The US is playing catch up. There's no question about that. We have a lot of work to do, but we've got to at least hit women where they are so they feel comfortable talking about this and not whispering about it like we did and did for a long time.
Yes, and it does have a direct impact on how you perform, how you function, and you're right. In talking to other women, the fear of the inability to perform at a certain level
Hmm.
can completely prohibit and prevent them from doing what's been placed in their heart to do. And I want to talk more about, what you're working on, as well as just this menopause movement in general, and what a blessing it is to be a part of a conversation that has been so needed for so long.
Yes.
I adore you. My guest today is Tamsen Fidel. She is a big time news anchor in New York City and social media advocate for all things midlife and just an absolute love. We'll be back right after this. Hey there, coffee lovers. Let's talk about something we can all relate to, our love for that rich, aromatic cup of coffee in the morning. But how often have you settled for a mediocre or burnt brew, or even had to splurge on a drive-through for just a decent cup of coffee? Well, I'm here to tell you there is a game changer on the horizon, and it's Cometeer. All right, I've got to admit, I was a little bit skeptical when I first heard about flash frozen coffee, but let me tell you, trying my very first cup of Cometeer completely changed my perspective. The flavor is absolutely out of this world, and it's super easy to prepare. No machines, no gadgets, and best of all, no cleanup. And the convenience? Well, Cometeer is delivered right to your door on dry ice. You can store it in your freezer until you're ready for a cup. For hot coffee, you simply drop the frozen puck into your cup, add some hot water, and watch it just melt into perfection. But here's the kicker. You can customize your coffee however you like it, whether it's a hot cup, an iced coffee, a latte, or even a coffee-infused martini. Cometeer has you covered. Oh, and here's a bonus for the travelers out there. Cometeer capsules are TSA approved, so you can take your premium quality coffee with you wherever you work or play. It's kind of like having your favorite local cafe in your pocket, right? So join the future of coffee with Cometeer and get a curated starter pack of their most popular roasts. All you have to do is go to cometeer.com/over50 to get a free 8-pack and a travel mug when you sign up. That is a free 8-pack of coffees and a travel mug when you sign up at cometeer.com/over50. Welcome back. My guest is dear friend Tamsen Fidel, who is a news anchor in New York City. She's been a journalist for more than 30 years. She is a midlife and menopause advocate. She is an author. She is really now, as we were talking before commercial break, becoming part of policy and making change in the workforce. And this fell on the heels of some side work, your little side hustle that you're doing, Tamsen. So you mentioned a documentary. You got a lot going on, is what I want to say.
Ah,
And I want to talk about, by the way, how you're managing all that's going on, because I know there's a big shift coming in your life as well. Not to mention the fact that you have written a book about relationships, after your divorce, which was brutal and public. So you have had your hands in a lot of different aspects of life and midlife and have been very, very brave and courageous to bring all of that to the forefront. So I want to hit all of those, but I want to learn a little bit
thank you.
more about this documentary that you're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. This started out, like I told you, during the pandemic, talking to people and interviewing people, and then kind of finding a group, kind of finding a group of four women. There's four of us total, but three other women that were going through the same thing I was going through. And
Mhm.
each one of us came at it a different way.
Right.
And two of the partners that I have done documentaries before. I have never, what we've done for so long is like, get it on the air today. And
Yes.
if I did a special, maybe I had 2 weeks to do the special, but that was about it. So this is a real learning curve for me, but I've really found this message to be something that I need to deliver and feel. I just feel it in here that I want to deliver. I have, I visualize when there's going to be the screening of it so that it helps women. The documentary is called Shredding the Silence,
Mm.
and it's talking about not just menopause, but how we're dealing with this as an overall crisis in so many ways. Half of the population is going to go through it. 1.1 billion women will be in menopause or going into menopause, perimenopausal, dealing with
Mhm.
symptoms by the year 2025. And the fact that we have doctors that have very, very little knowledge about it. One, to her own admission, told me she Googles sometimes when a patient comes in with some of these symptoms before she had to go and teach herself. And so it's not the doctor's fault. They haven't been educated with this for
No.
years, for 2 decades or more. And so I just felt it important to talk about so many different aspects of it, because it's not just the symptoms that we talk about, and it's not just
Mhm.
that it affects us in the workplace. There's so many different areas that have to be dealt with, from policy for more research dollars to helping with regard to medical schools and teaching doctors,
Mhm.
educating them so they're not afraid of hormone therapy. I don't advocate for anything in particular. I advocate for you getting advice from a menopause specialist, but to not even be able to have somebody to go to talk to
Right.
is frightening. And then to learn how to deal with it when it comes to relationships, and how to deal with it when it comes to just everyday life, because it can really be debilitating depending on what kind of symptoms you have.
Yeah, I think that, and you're right. It's not just one area. Menopause isn't just hot flashes. It is so much
Mm-mm.
more. And I'm so glad you brought in just the brain fog. And for me, it was irritability and depression, which was so
Sure.
foreign for somebody who's just kind of naturally a happy person. But it manifests in so many different ways and
Yeah.
expresses in a variety of ways in women, and they don't know or understand. And as you know, so many have been misdiagnosed with depression, put
Mm-hmm.
on antidepressants,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not to say that maybe they didn't need those, but maybe menopause treatment was the right option for them at that time. And a lot of women just feel like they are losing it in midlife.
Yeah.
They are losing
Yeah.
themselves. They are losing what they remember of themselves. And you and I both had to do it in the public eye and on camera. And I'm just curious about your personal menopause journey. Obviously, brain fog was a biggie for you, hot flashes. What else were you going through, and when did it start for you?
Yeah, lack of sleep, and I didn't really realize what I was going through, because I was perimenopausal for a number of years. I was
Yes.
put on antidepressants. I was put on Lexapro. And
Yeah.
so I was given Lexapro for a number of years, thinking that that's what I was treating, or that was what we were treating. But the truth is, it didn't help anything else. So I
Mm.
would sit in the makeup chair, and my body'd be on fire, and I'd go, the makeup artist would be like, "Are you sick?" And I said, "No, no, no. I think maybe I don't know, maybe I'm getting a cold or a sign." It was hot
Mhm.
flashes,
Yeah.
debilitating hot flashes, to a point where you just kind of, you feel like you're just melting, and then it stops, and then you think you're okay again. Lack of sleep was a big one for me, and
Yes.
at the time I had moved. I had a lot of different things going on in my life. I'd gone through my divorce in 2012, and so those years kind of leading up to that next part were a lot of the perimenopausal years, though I didn't realize it, because you go for 12 months without a period, and that's supposed to be the sign that you now hit, the day after is the day that you've hit menopause.
Right.
But what happened was, I have endometrium polyps, so I bled. And so I didn't know the difference of whether I was having a period or
Mm.
not. It was just sporadic all over the place.
Yeah.
But it turned out that I was going into menopause. So when I had that incident, I landed on the floor of the bathroom. I went back to the OBGYN, who I had seen for 2 decades, probably since I was young. And they did blood work, and they said, "Oh, you're postmenopause. Like, you've hit menopause." So I
Wow.
didn't even realize all that had happened. So all that time I was treating depression. I was treating, so and I didn't have a mom to talk about any of those things with, because I lost my mom at an early age, and she had breast cancer. So all I knew is that when I got older, probably nothing would be an option for me that was estrogen based. I just knew that that was never going to be an option, simply because of the fear that they have about estrogen. So I never talked to her about it. I'm assuming she went through a surgical menopause due to the fact that she had a double mastectomy, but
Mm-hmm.
I never had anybody to talk to about it. So it wasn't anything on my radar. And then when I went out there talking about it, so many other women said even when they had moms to talk about it was never a discussion for them to talk about. It just wasn't something we talked about. And the fact that in 2023 now we're finally talking about it, it's like,
What took
it's
so long?
shocking to
It
me,
is shocking.
isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, men have erectile dysfunction and a little blue
Yep.
pill is made and there are
Yep.
commercials everywhere where we're talking
Yep.
about that. But this,
It
it's absolutely bizarre to me, which I think has led to the flood and the influx of content and content
Mhm.
creators who are saying
Mhm.
enough is enough. It's time to get out there and it's time to have these dialogues. So I'm grateful for the documentary that you're working on. I think,
Thank you.
those real and raw conversations with a myriad of women will
Yeah.
paint a bigger and a better picture because it's just like
Yes.
you said, this is what I went through, but it may be, I've had some women say, I went through menopause and I barely felt a thing. I'm like, hey, props to you because that wasn't my experience at all.
That
And
was
I'm
not me.
grateful. That wasn't me. It was a living nightmare. And
Yeah.
sometimes you just don't expect that. And we know similar doctors, Dr. Mary Claire Haver and Menopause Taylor and Dr. Susan.
Mhm. Mhm.
These are wonderful practitioners who have all shifted
Yes.
from the OB-GYN practice into now menopause care.
Thank goodness. Thank
Thank
goodness.
goodness, and more doctors are doing that because they're seeing this absolute void. But the message is, and it's like you say, Tamsen, you go 12 months without a period, and then the next day you're in menopause. But the deal is, we're in menopause the rest of our lives.
The ret
And it's not
40%
just about
now.
mitigating symptoms anymore. It's about, well, our heart health, our brain health.
Mhm.
How are we
Mhm.
going to age and how are we going to manage all of this? And so, these conversations are evergreen and ever growing because it's not like, oh, okay, you're 53. And so let's talk about it now. And then we never talk about it again.
No. No, you're so right. A lot of it is the good news, I think, is it gives us time to, I had to take a step back and go, what's really important? Like, how do I want the rest of my life to look? How do I want to feel? Do I want to wake up every day just thinking like, "Oh, I got to do this again?" That's not what I want. I lost a mother at a very young age. My father is 83 right now, and I see him being grateful for every day. And
Yes.
I had to really stop myself in my tracks and say, what's important? What is my message going forward? And
Mhm.
what do I want to leave behind? Like what is that I want to talk about every day? And to see women get help in this space or feel
Mhm.
heard is what's important to me. We were talking about news for a second, and this was something that it happened, and I was very nervous about it.
Mm.
I went to the station and I said to them, like, I want to do a PSA about Menopause Awareness Month, which is the month of October.
Yes.
And they said, well, isn't that Breast Cancer Awareness Month? That's what you always talk about. And I said, yes, of course, because,
Mhm.
breast cancer, it's very personal to me. And I said, but I really think that menopause is something that, women need to hear, and they need to hear it on television. So we're saying that word. Because did you ever say the word on television? Did we ever do stories on it? Maybe like a
Nope.
study every once in a while? Me neither.
Barely. Yeah.
Barely.
I'm sorry.
Barely.
My brain at the time couldn't tell you.
I don't know. We might have. I have to
Could
ask
have.
like the younger person next to me. But
Right.
so I did a PSA for the month. It's airing. It's the month of October is when it aired.
Bravo.
Yeah, and I was like, oh my gosh, am I doing this? Like, as I was recording it, I was very nervous, thinking like, what's everybody in the back that's recording this thinking? But I
Yeah.
had to do it, so I was sweating, and it wasn't even a hot flash. I was just sweating through the whole thing.
Right.
But it aired the whole month, and so I'm really proud of that. But the
Oh,
fact that this is the first time that something like I've ever done anything like that. I've done, public service announcements for all sorts of different things, but never for something like this.
yes. Wow, and I'm grateful that your station said yes to it because I think too,
Me
look,
too.
it's the news business. They see
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
conversations that are happening. They see the articles that are showing up in the New York
Yes.
Times. They see
Yes.
what's going on in social media. You can't be, an ostrich with your head in the sand. You've
Right.
got to you have to be a participant in this or else
Yes.
you've missed the train. So that's
You're so
that's a
right about
wonderful
that.
thing. Thank goodness, and thank goodness that you pushed and you're an advocate because had it not been for you, nobody else would have been there pushing for it. They never would have done it.
No, no, because I don't think everybody wants that attached to their name. But I got to tell you, I can't wait till the word menopause doesn't make people, everybody
Cringe.
cringe because they're
Yeah.
so.
It's, it's not a cringy word.
No, somebody told me before a meeting recently, she's like, don't use the word menopause. It's a turn off, okay? And I said, it's not. It's
It is
not.
not at all. At
It's
all.
not.
Well, listen, if you can get through menopause and manage it and do better and feel better and
Yep.
feel like you've got your game going, it's like, dang, it's like the when Harry met Sally, I'll have what she's having,
I'll have what she's having. You're so
right?
right about that. You're
Isn't
so
that
right.
what you want? You want to find the
Yes.
secret sauce.
Don't you get excited when you see women that are this age or, whatever, 45, 55, 65, and they're just phenomenal? Like that gives me so
Yes.
much energy. That gives me so much. I get so excited about that.
Me too. I want to know. It's like I see it. I want to know
Me too.
more. What are you doing? Share what you're
Yep.
doing. I
Yep.
think it's great because I think for so long the reason why menopause was so cringy is because the media. It's like the same reason stepmom is such a bad word. The
Yes,
evil
I know.
stepmother
I know.
because of how movies portrayed the
I
stepmom.
know.
It's the same thing with media. It's like you go through menopause and it's like you've gone from like the thong to the diaper. That's not the case. Okay, that's not the
It's
case.
so true. It's funny. I Googled like a bunch of images of women in menopause and they were horrific images. They were
Yes.
horrific. It's like hysterical women. So I went, oh gosh, we got to get some more imagery. We got to
Yeah.
get some more imagery out there for sure.
Well, you are putting out some beautiful imagery, my friend, about
Back at
menopause.
you. Back at
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. And I'm so excited for your focus and your shift. And
Thank you.
for those of us who are with us, I mean, Tamsen is just blowing up social media, your Instagram, your TikTok. I mean, girl, you are killing it. You're on YouTube, you're putting out videos. And I want to just continue to see you blossom and grow and really, really just own this space that you're in. And so, just like yours truly went through a big shift a
Yes.
couple of years ago, I kind of wonder where you are at the
I'm
moment.
I'm right there. I'm shifting.
You're shifting.
That shift is happening. That shift has a date to it now, and I'm
Okay.
excited. We're talking about the second week in November, and somebody said, "You're retiring," and I said, "No, I'm not. I'm not. I'm just taking everything that I've done so far, and moving it into the next place that I want to be, because I
Yes.
just feel like there is a something bigger that I'm supposed to be doing." And I want to do that, and I want to be able to do that full time, and I'm
Mhm.
excited about it. I'm scared. I think we all are when it comes
Yeah.
to a transition. I mean, 30 years in this industry, but I just think that there's different places that my voice can be in this industry and outside this industry where it makes the most sense for me. So I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to it. And I don't know, we talk a lot about transition and how you change and what you go through and next steps and what's next. And those are always conversations that can be scary because they don't have real definitive answers. But I feel like for the first time,
Mhm.
I'm embracing that as exciting, not
Yes.
petrified. Not that I need to have the to do list of where I'm going to be next. Although I have tons of to do lists nowadays, but
Oh, trust me, it's going to grow. You have no idea.
but I use you as a beautiful example of somebody that has had an incredible career in one area and now an incredible career in another. And at the same time, speaking to communities. And I think that that's what both of these things have in common, right?
Yes.
We're part of communities. We talk to these communities. We listen. We're
Mhm.
conduits of information. I mean, I think that what gets me most excited is finding incredible people to bring to other people like a
Yes.
matchmaker. I think that
Yes.
that's really important because I think it changes lives.
It does. The power of community, and especially in this case, and I'm sure you've discovered as well, the power of sisterhood and vulnerability. And
Yeah.
what I have found, and I'm sure you see it too as you read through the comments and you connect with women, is that the minute you bring your guard down, and that's a very strange thing for a news anchor to do,
Yeah.
because we're getting away from being the deliverer of a message that we didn't maybe necessarily decide what that message was. We're going
Right.
to inform the community, but a news team and a news management decided what that message would be. And maybe we had a hand or a role in that, but
Right.
minimally. But now you're moving into a space where you're deciding what your message is. And not only that, you're sharing your own personal story and you're being very vulnerable in in your messaging. And I think you have found too that in doing so, yes, it's like unzipping yourself and saying, "Here I am."
Yes.
But at the same time, other women start doing that, and there is such comfort in numbers, and I think that's why you've grown so much on your platforms, is you've been willing to go there. And was it scary for you, or did it just sort of feel like a natural evolution?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it was a little bit of both, to be honest. I think that it was very scary to go there at first. And then as I did, I felt that strength because people
Mhm.
responded. You're right. We've always had layers around us, right?
Yes.
Layers of other people, whether it's a writer or a producer or managers, levels of managers. And
Mhm.
I think when it's you and it's on you, there's a great responsibility that comes with that, and there's a lot of vulnerability that you have, and you have to be okay with that
Mhm.
kind of judgment. And that kind of judgment happens, whether you're talking about a divorce, whether you're talking
Yeah.
about menopause, whether you're talking about aging, whether you're talking about how to transition in a career. And so it was very scary at first. And, it's not been that long that I've done it, but it's been long enough for me to know. And I have that feeling inside when I go, okay, we're going to see how this goes. And then all of a sudden I'm so, grateful for the response that comes with it that lets me know I'm in the right place. And that's
Yes.
what it is. That response lets me know I'm in
Yes.
the right place because otherwise, I don't think I would continue to be that vulnerable. I think that if I
Mhm.
felt that I didn't see people responding or changing or telling me how it helped them or
Yep.
asking for advice, that I would continue down that road. But I feel like there's a real need out there that needs to be served.
Yeah, there's no question. And you've been brilliant in your sharing and your vulnerability, and you've done so in multiple areas and multiple ways. And so,
So
after
have
we take
you.
a well, thank you. But I want to talk about, we also have similar personal lives as well. And you've been very public about yours. And I love also, you're not just menopause, but you talk about relationships, and you spend a great deal of time focusing on what to look for and what not to look for in
Yes.
somebody. What are flags? I love listening to your flags. It's like, oh yeah, I've seen that one. I know that one. And oh yeah, I
I know
walked
that
away
flag.
because of that one. Lots of flags. So when we come back, I want to dive into that aspect of you, because
Yes.
you definitely deal with relationships, and I just am so curious as to what you've gleaned over the years, and a lot of it has come through hardship. So we'll take a quick break. We're back with Tamsen Fidel right after this. Welcome back. I hope you are enjoying the conversation that I'm having with my friend Tamsen Fidel today. She is just such a powerhouse and really creating a beautiful space on social media and online about menopause and midlife, and just being an advocate for women going through all kinds of life change. Tamsen, I mean, we were talking a lot about menopause before the
Yeah.
break. Career shifts, you've got a
Yes.
big one coming up, and you're moving into this space full time, and I
Mhm.
commend you and I congratulate you, and I think you're gonna absolutely love it
Thank
as you
you.
navigate this kind of new normal for you. And I'm here for
Yeah.
you, by the way, for anything if you want to pick
You're
my
gonna be
brain.
getting a lot of those late night phone calls.
Yes, I'm here. Trust me, I'm not going anywhere. But also, you've written a book about relationships, and you did so on the heels of a very painful and public divorce. um, you know I, I've been through that too. I didn't write a book about it, but I've had to address it publicly, and
Sure, I know.
that's tough. That's really
Mhm,
tough. What prompted you
mhm.
to write about it? And I think, if I'm not mistaken, you and your then husband had started a company where it was
I did.
like a matchmaking company, or relationships, or what were you doing?
Yeah.
And tell me how all this came to be.
Yeah, of course. We met in Philadelphia actually, and we moved to New York. And we started a matchmaking business. It was a
Yeah.
relationship coaching and matchmaking business. He had a lot of people that he knew socially, and we
Mhm.
we started the business from scratch. We started it together. At the time we moved to New York, the statistic was 100,000 more single women than men in New York City
Mm.
that were looking for somebody. And I mean, this was years ago. We're talking like 2005, I think.
Yeah.
And the business was great. I mean, it was a fun business, a social business. We had a lot of events. We had dating boot camps,
Mm.
and there was a need. There was a real need. Women wanted to meet people. Men wanted to meet people. It was a fun business, and we gave a lot of relationship advice. And then we went through our own set of problems, and we wound up divorcing. And if you live in New York, well, I guess anywhere, there's page 6 is the area that a lot of
Yes.
gossipy things
Yep.
happen. And page 6, love the headlines, matchmakers that are in love are getting a divorce.
Right.
And that kind of started something that I didn't really want to talk about publicly being very, very public very quickly. So, I'd walk out of my building and somebody would say like, oh my, I saw page 6, you're getting divorced. Oh my, what happened? And so that was a difficult time. And, there was a lot in that relationship that was just, it was never going to be able to be right again, and there were a lot of
Mhm.
issues that we had between us that were not something that we could get past. And so we went through the divorce, and I never really talked. He talked a lot to the paper and talked to different people, and I just never really talked. And I went through a lot of those quiet times, those Friday nights alone, sitting there just, kind of thinking of my own thoughts, walking around the city, trying to figure out what happened. How did I get here? I waited till I was older to get married. How did this happen? And I wrote a lot about it for myself. And then I was approached in 2000, maybe 14, which was a few years after the divorce had been finalized, about doing a book on that because I had written 2 other books about dating. And now I'm going through this. So, well, the first one was dating, the second one was about getting married. And they said, well, this is the trilogy, the third one about
Right.
divorce. I went, oh gosh,
Great.
it kind
Let's
of is.
close it out.
And so the only thing I'm not going to do is talk about him. Like I didn't want it
Yes.
to be this tell all, like just bash somebody.
No.
That's not respectful of anything, and it doesn't serve it doesn't serve anything. And so what I did do is talk about how I got through it, and I
Yeah.
talked about the different amount of days and what you could accomplish in 30 days, 90 days, 120 days, 360 days, because that's really how I had to break things down. The divorce was hard for me, and as you know, it's painful. It was
Yes.
embarrassing.
Yep.
My business was tied up in it too, that we had together. So that was something that we had to undo. We had a
Hmm.
television show together. We had to undo a lot of things that went along with the marriage, that came after we were married for a certain number of years and these businesses were built. And, and I just remember sitting here thinking, like, I have nothing, I have no advice for anybody. Like, what advice could I didn't deal with this myself. So I was very honest about that. And I
Yeah.
really just talked about what I did on a personal scale to get through it. And then I started hearing more and more women going through divorce and being a little more open about it. And so when that book came out, it was called The New Single,
Mhm.
about being single all over again. I had never dated online. I didn't even know how to do any of those things. It really wasn't that popular when the first time around. So anyway, that's what the book was about. And yeah, I wound up talking a little bit more about it on social. And now that seems to be something people are asking all the time. So I thought
Yes.
I left those days behind me, but,
No, ma'am.
something we have to talk about.
Yeah, I was some. What are some of the pearls of wisdom that you give? Because you're great with lists. You
Oh,
love
I
to
like
list. You do, and you number them, and you're very very systematic, and it's great. And I'll sit there and I'll listen to well, I'll watch it, listen both, and I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, I've done that one. Oh no, I've seen that happen. So give me some of your nuggets.
It's
Your
isn't
what
it
you
so
gleaned in
Oh my
relationships
gosh.
and flags
You
and
know
stuff like that.
You know what I think the biggest one is, and this is what I've noticed nowadays more than anything else. I've noticed that people tell you who they are. And I
Yeah.
didn't understand what that meant a long time ago, but I feel like that is a big one that people
Yep.
tell you who they are and we don't listen. And that was one of the things I wrote about in the book. We talk about red flags all the time. And I said, I don't necessarily think it's red flags that are the biggest problem. It's those pink ones that we think we're going to change.
Well, we can
That
fix that.
they're just a little, they're not so bad and we can fix that about them. And I've realized that in this time, if you don't know who you are, and then you're looking to somebody else for that, that's where those problems come about. And I was in a relationship where he had 20 pink flags and I said, I can change, not a big deal. He just doesn't know what he's doing. I got that. I can figure that. I can deal with that. I think that the other issue anyway, I see a lot is that people don't leave the past in the past. And I think that they
Yeah.
take a lot of what's happened in that other relationship and bring it to the next one, have a
Mhm.
repeat situation and are very confused by it. So I did spend a lot of time by myself after that divorce before I
Mhm.
moved into, I'm married again, something I said I would never do.
Yeah.
Never getting married again.
Yep.
But I found
Trauma, too
somebody,
much trauma.
too much drama. I
Right.
found somebody though that I really want to walk the world with, and that's
Yes.
really how I say it. I found somebody that I want by my side, not somebody that I need to complete me. I'm complete.
Yep.
but he's somebody that I love being with, and I love and I respect, and
Mm,
he knows who he is, and I think
yes.
that that's the biggest part of it for me anyway, in terms of what I think is really really important. Um, I also think that there's no countdown clock for this. A
Yeah.
lot of people, once they go through it, and I get a lot of messages like, when am I going to meet somebody? You know, some are younger. I'm 35. I want to have kids, or I'm 50. How am I ever going to meet anybody? So I hear a
Mm,
lot of that, and that pressure doesn't
yeah.
help. It doesn't move anybody forward. And I think we put it on ourselves, and then that's where we make mistakes.
Absolutely. And I so agree with you. I think everybody's got to do their own work to
Hmm.
become whole because people don't
Yes.
make each other whole. You've got two wholes have to come together. And I
Yes.
would believe that you would say that about you and Ira, and that it was two whole people who did their work, who dug deep and resolved some issues and personal conflicts and and hiccups and hangups and things that we bring
Sure.
along from our past to be able to make that happen. And I'm in that midlife single space and
Yeah. Yeah.
navigating that and I'm my perspective is I'm very hopeful because I think
Mhm.
that I've learned a lot and I'm doing a lot of that work that needed to be done to
Yeah.
reflect and to pay attention to things. And to me, I see it as optimistic. I see it as, finally,
Yes.
when it hits my life full throttle, I think I'm the person that I want and need to be to meet somebody as a whole person. And so I think you and I can both encourage women at this stage of life that it's not too late. And people always talk about, well, the pool is so small and men our age are looking for 30 somethings
Younger
and
girls, right.
younger girls. And yeah, okay, that stereotype may be true, but you know what? There are good quality men out there
Yes.
seeking women
Yes.
who are smart, who can bring game, who have intellect, who can
Mhm.
hold a conversation, who can, reflect and remember the music of the 70s and 80s instead of looking at them puzzled like, the puppy dog with the head
Who's
twist.
Sharon?
I mean, come on. So I think we have to remember that we still have so much to offer.
I couldn't agree more with that, and I do hear that a lot, like, "Oh, men just want younger women." I don't think
Yeah.
that's necessarily true, and I talk to a lot of men that that's not
Mhm.
what they're looking for. They're not setting out to look for that. I think I think what we do oftentimes, do we think that, and then we reflect that out there, if that's what we're assuming about somebody else. And
Yes.
I did a lot of dating, obviously, before I got married the first time, because I was in this business. I had moved around a ton. I'd moved, I don't even know how many cities I moved to before I ended up in New York. And so, I just was always thinking, like, I'm never going to stay here for long. I'm never going to stay here. So I
Yeah.
never really had a lot of big relationships, or committed relationships. But I just definitely know the difference between when I was dating then and then I was dating in midlife. And, I got divorced at 41. So I was in this, 42 is when it was official. Like, I just turned 40. It was this time of, like, trying to make a bunch of decisions about children, about relationships, about where I go next. My career was, like, in that stage, but not totally solidified yet.
Yes.
And then I look at where I am today, and with Ira, and who he is. I don't know that I didn't set out to look for somebody. I just kept things very open. And I
Yeah.
wound up meeting him in front of an elevator bank at the Fountain Blue Hotel in Miami. He was there for a conference. I was there, like, hanging out at the pool. And, I remember thinking, like, I'm not ready for any kind of relationship. And I remember he was like, dun, when he met me. And I thought, like, he's interesting, but I'm not ready for that. But
Right.
it can be so unsuspecting of where you meet somebody. And so people often
Yes.
ask, like, where am I going to go meet somebody at this stage? Or I have to get back online. You don't have to. I don't think it
Mhm.
would hurt to, but I don't
Yep.
think you have to do that. And I also think that you need to push out there, if you are single, or if you are looking for somebody. But I just don't think it has to be this mission. Like, I am
Mhm.
going out there, I want to find somebody because by Christmas time, I want somebody to spend time with. And I think that that's where oftentimes mistakes are made. We rush into something, we don't know who somebody is, and
Yeah.
we have regrets oftentimes.
Yeah, I agree. I think we have to release expectations because when we
Hmm.
do put those parameters around something, we really set ourselves up for disappointment. And I
Yes.
think we try to intercept maybe what God's plan is for us,
Yes.
and it's
Yes, we
like
do.
how you and Ira met. I mean, it was a happenstance, random
Mhm.
greeting and occasion. You both living in New York at the time, or where was he?
No, he's in LA, so that's why we go back and forth, which is what's going to be really nice with this next, this next transition in my life to be able to do that because he was LA full time and I
Ah,
was New York full time. And so he has since, due to the pandemic, I came back here. So we have a apartment here in New York, but he has to travel a ton. So it's
yeah.
why I end up in LA a lot. So no, so we made a lot of concessions for it. And then during the pandemic, he, kind of stayed put in New York, which was also very telling of what
Yeah.
was going to happen.
How you guys are going to do in a New York apartment during
I
a
know.
pandemic.
Well, he got his own place too here, like a place to stay, and then eventually during the middle of the pandemic, we moved in together after there'd been enough time. I felt like that it made sense, but
Yeah.
we made a lot of concessions, and not even concessions, just like a lot of changes to be together,
Mhm.
and I look back now and I'm like, wow, I wish we'd have decided all this sooner, but I'm glad we did it this way. We went through what I call 4 seasons. Like we went through this
Yes.
like year period to really get to know each other because I think we go through a lot of changes in a year. And so that's where kind of those 30 days, 60 days, 90 days,
Mhm.
365 days, come from, is to be able to know who that other person is.
Yeah, and I
Especially at
couldn't.
this age because
Oh my gosh.
we know who we
Especially.
are.
Yes, and I love the fact that how the setup that you had presented these natural separations, if you will. But
Yes.
it,
Yeah.
it's so interesting because when we are physically around somebody, we tend to rush things because if there is a
Yep.
strong physical connection, that lust can sort of override love. And I know
Yep.
I've been guilty of that. And then you make irrational decisions based on all these endorphins that you're feeling because you're with somebody, you're around them all the time. It feels so good. It's like, yeah, yeah, I'll do that. Sure, I'll do that. That sounds
Right.
great. Yeah, why not? But in situations like this, you really get to know somebody because you're not with them
Yes.
all the time. You rely on conversations, you rely on FaceTime. I mean, I think there is a certain depth that takes place where, like you said, your 4 seasons where you really, really get to know somebody before you're around them all the time. And it's like, well, I already know so much about you. So now it's like little nuances, do you
Yes.
leave the toilet seat up or down? Or, but these are fixable things. The big
Those are
stuff,
the fixable ones. The big
right?
steps aren't fixable.
Yeah.
It's funny. I feel like in some ways we got to do a little bit of the old fashioned dating because we did a lot of phone,
Yep.
because we were on the phone a lot, and he's like not great technically, quite frankly. So I'm like, we're going to do FaceTime. So press it.
Yes.
So it would take like 3 or 4 times to figure that out. So sometimes I'm like, let's just do audio.
Right.
But we did that because he was there based full time. He's in this industry in a different area of the industry, and so he
Mhm.
has shows that are out there, and he needed to be there. It wasn't an option, and so when he was here, we would enjoy those, or we would plan a weekend that he would come in, and we would go out, and so it was nice to not only get to know him, but also get to know myself a little bit better too, and what I
Yes.
was looking for. Because what I was looking for the first time around, or when I was younger, is very different from what I want now. What I want
Correct.
now is somebody that is not giving me a project. Like I don't need a project. I didn't need somebody
Amen,
to
sister.
take on.
Right.
I didn't need to help somebody grow their career and figure out who they were because I knew who I was. I didn't need somebody that needed their hand held through all of it. And that's not to say that I don't, we don't support each other in a million ways, but I
Right.
didn't need to grow somebody. I need to be somebody's mother. And I think that when I was younger, I always felt like that was sort of part of what the job, what the job was as a wife or
Right.
as a girlfriend. And
Your
now it's just
fertilizer.
very different. Yes,
Yes.
exactly. You need some more over here.
Mhm.
And so now it's just really nice, and it's very drama free, and there's not,
Yeah.
I don't know, there's not all these issues that pop up all the time, and I focus on what I want to do, and he doesn't take away from what I want to do. He adds to it,
Mm.
and that's a nice thing to have. But I have to say that I spent a lot of time by myself between that, and I really appreciated that because that helped me grow. And my father always said it's better to be alone than lonely with somebody, and so I always remembered
Absolutely.
that. Yeah, and I didn't want to be lonely with somebody because that's the worst.
Yeah,
That's
and
just
that
the
easily
worst.
happens because we're
Yeah.
fearful of being alone and
Yep.
all that that entails, and we think
Yep.
oftentimes, well, it's better not to rock the boat and keep the
Yep.
peace because there's a framework here and a system here, even though it may not be serving me and may not be
Yeah.
good for me. But the fear of that potential loneliness scares a lot of people
Oh,
from
it's frightening.
maybe receiving, the best love that could come into their lives. And honestly, the most important love is the love that you get to experience on your own. And like you said, Tamsen, that's a process. It's, there are
Yes.
lonely nights, by the way, that come with that, and
Mhm.
moments of uncertainty and insecurity, but also these blissful, wonderful, and beautiful moments of self-discovery. And I think, you start to dig in your heels and you say, this is who I am. And I
Mhm.
like this about me, and I value this about me, and I'm not willing to give this up in the name of being in a
Right.
relationship with somebody.
Right. Right.
And that's a
And that's
beautiful
what that
thing,
it is, and that's where you kind of set who you are. And I think when both people come to a relationship like that, there's a mutual respect that comes with that.
right?
And then I also think that there is a different kind of growth that happens too, because you're kind
Yeah.
of growing a third thing, which is your relationship together, right? You've
Yes.
got you got yourselves, and then you've got that relationship together. And we've both explored different things that normally I would never do, or he would never do. He's going to the ballet tonight, actually. So,
Oh, and
for
you're not
example.
joining? Well,
I know I'm going. I am, but he's never been, and I was like, "Well, you're
oh,
going now."
well,
So,
there you go.
yes, but but we have a nice time together. But you're right, that learning of who you are during those quiet times, and that it took a lot. People ask that question, and what I did during that. I spent a lot of alone time in a city of 8 million, 9 million people, feeling very lonely a
Yeah.
lot, and then embracing it. I did a lot. I went through. I had a lot of therapy during that time, and I
Yep.
always talk about that because it was very necessary for me to speak about it. I at work, I didn't feel like that was a place I could talk, or I'd feel comfortable. I
Mhm.
didn't know tons of people in the city except for the couples that we knew together. So I really learned who my friends were. I learned how to make new friends, and then I learned what else would be an addition to my life versus my life being totally about the relationship. And I think
Yeah.
that was important for me.
I agree with you. I think that self-discovery and self-work in whatever
Hmm.
form. I'm glad you mentioned therapy. I mean, it's something I've been doing since the passing of my mother, just to make sure
Yeah.
that I process grief well. And
Yeah.
you and I, we were talking earlier, you can just get lost in the work, and I just didn't want to
Yeah.
get lost in the work and not feel, and to make sure that I was feeling. And so therapy is critical for
Yes.
everybody and anything and any stage and anything that you're going through, to be able to just have that safe place to talk. So, thank you for mentioning that, and
Yeah.
just being
Yeah.
such a bold and brave face in this, midlife journey, whether it's relationships, menopause, now you taking this wonderful and beautiful leap of faith, leaving a very steady, lucrative news
Yes.
career and
Yes.
jumping into the abyss.
Yes.
And I'm so
I love
glad,
my
and I'm so
friendships
proud.
in the abyss, though. I love it.
I know. No, you're gonna kill. You already are killing it, and you're doing amazing things. And I'm just so proud to
Thank
know
you.
you, and to be in this journey with you.
Oh, feel the
And
same way.
well, thank you. You're so special. And the next, I keep saying, the next time you come to this area, we
I
must, we
know.
must, we must go have dinner together and spend some
We
time.
will. We will.
Um, I normally ask this question at the beginning of the podcast,
Okay.
but I was just so stinking excited to start talking to you about all things midlife that I forgot to ask. Since the podcast is called Over and 50 and
Mhm.
Flourishing, I wanted to know how you plan on flourishing this week.
Oh, this week?
Yeah.
This week. Oh, you know what? I'm flourishing this week because I am spending quality time with my dad. He's 83 years old. He's here visiting. He went through a loss 2 years ago with his wife, and so it's been a
Oh,
tough few years.
yeah.
But I just really think that I'm learning so much about him in the time that I'm spending with him, and I just feel like that is helping me flourish and learn that you can just kind of handle anything, and it's just kind of a nice moment. So I'm flourishing with that. Ira's going to flourish at the ballet and the symphony. So he's going
With
to be
you.
doing both of those with me. So that's how I'm flourishing.
Well, that's awesome, flourishing. And I just encourage you, enjoy time with your dad. I know you know how precious this time is and these moments are, and
They are.
they're everything. And I'm so glad that you have him, and are blessed, to have this time together. So it's going to be beautiful flourishing for you. And I just, for all of our listeners and viewers, I will provide all of your socials, your website, your
Thank
YouTube,
you.
so everybody can find you and follow you, and just appreciate you as much as I do. But I am so, so grateful that we had this time to chat. It's probably been an hour, but you and I could go on
I love it.
all day long.
I love it. I love it. I have to say, and I've said it before to you and maybe earlier today, I don't even know, but I think you're the gold standard with this. I think you're just so exceptional. You were doing this before anybody else, even knew what YouTube was in our industry,
I
because our
didn't know.
industry is like, wait, what? Social media? What? It's
Yeah.
it's such a it's something so different, and it's beautiful to see. It's beautiful to see the community you've built, and more than that, I just feel like such a genuineness from you, and I am appreciative of this kind of friendship at this time in life.
Yep, me too. Me too. I think we are blessed. And I think that the richness of the connection that is made at this time is beyond, because I think women like us and women who are watching and listening are so craving this type of real
Yes.
connection, and vulnerability is the only way to get there, and just to be open in
Amen.
dialogue.
Yep.
I'm grateful to have found people like you, and people in my life who have shown themselves and shown up and shown out in such a way. So thank you, my dear. Thank you for your time today. I
Thank
know
you.
you are a busy woman and you've got news and you've got content to produce.
Never,
You're
never.
going to
I
be on
am
my
right here.
Instagram feed, I'm sure, the minute I pull it up.
Thank you.
I really hope you enjoyed today's dialogue and love her as much as I do. She is just such a wonderful woman, a woman of boldness, and a true example of what it means to make a pivot in midlife and to really bring a story to life. So thank you, Tamsen. Thank you for your time, your effort, your energy, and your passion, because it's awesome. And I so appreciate you. I appreciate you, by the way, following me and being a part of this journey with me as I explore my own transition from the news business into full-time social media, YouTube, podcasting. And so if you're watching this podcast on YouTube, please comment below. Tell us what you thought about this episode. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed the conversation. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And if you're listening to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, I always ask that you take the time to rate, review, subscribe, and share, because that's how we get the word out that we women going through menopause, and you know what? Share us with perimenopausal women. Let them in on this journey early so they know the conversations to have, they potentially know what to expect, and nothing comes as a surprise. And this way, the more informed we are, the better decisions we can make, and the better advocates we can be for our own lives. Thank you for being with me on Over 50 and Flourishing.